dashing forward. It is coming faster. So any animal that when it is slaughtered, the blood will be running that fast from the jugular vein is the one that we are talking about. And therefore, there are some animals that are not counted to be part of these animals that we are mentioning, like a fish. The blood of fish is not najisun. Why? First and foremost, we don't slaughter a fish for the blood to gush forward, for us to regard it as impurity. So if you check the note here, Musannif or the author gives us the classifications of it. He said impure. When we say impure, he said if the animal is haram to eat by nature or temporality forbidden due to external factors, such as being fed on filth or being sexually violated. Okay, this is very, very important. You see, when we say an animal that is impure, what are we talking about? There are animals that are pure by their nature, but when they are contaminated in some ways, that contamination automatically renders it to be najisun. Like for instance, an animal that is haram, okay, dog or a pig, automatically it is a haram and it is najisun. We cannot entertain such animals. Of course, when we say it is a najisun, it doesn't mean that it doesn't have any usefulness. It does have usefulness. Okay? It does have usefulness. And what is that usefulness? Like a dog. A dog is so important to humanity, but a dog has certain restrictions in terms of the kind of relationship that a human has with a dog. Okay? Why? Because these are the specific laws that our scholars, our ulama, our fuqaha, they have outlined from the Quran. So like a dog, when a dog eats from a container, that container remains najisun until a method that is specified to be used to clean that container before that container can be useful. Or even a hair of dog. When the hair of dog touches, a dress, that dress cannot be used to perform salat. So these are very strict in Islam, and there's no any two ways about it. We need at all instances to abide by that. But yet still there are other animals which are halal, but they also become najisun. What are those animals? Animals that can be eaten when those animals, they contaminate themselves with filth, such as eating, feces of other animals. That animal also becomes najisun. Even the sweat of that animal becomes najisun. And therefore, if an animal goes through that process by eating filth, there is a process that it has to go through. We call it al-istibara. Al-istibara al-haywan al-jallal. And an animal that is contaminated with feces or eats feces, it must go through certain processes for it to be clean. And in detailed fiqh, each and every animal has a specific period of time that it has to eat, halal or something that is lawful to eat for that period of time before the animal can now become halal. So such animal cannot be eaten until it goes through those processes before it can be eaten. So we call them, those are animals that we call them hayawan al-jallal, an animal that eats, impurities, which as a result of that, that animal becomes halal, haram, until it goes through the process of purification before it becomes, clean. The same way, when it comes to urine and feces of carnivorous animal, it is also najasun. Animal that is carnivore. Carnivore animals that eat other animals, eats flesh. Such animals, their urine is completely haram. It's najasun, sorry. It's najasun. For instance, tiger, lion, wolves, and all these animals, because they are carnivorous animals, their urine is najasun. Then we have other animals that, their urine is not najasun. We said if an animal is halal to eat, then in that case, the urine of that animal is not najasun. Okay. Then we have animals that, are halal to be eaten, such as camels. Okay. In Islam, it is allowed to eat camel and cows, chickens that are fed on felt to have impure urine and feces until they are purified by feeding clean food. And that is what I'm talking about. Yani, a camel is a halal. A cow is a halal. A chicken is a halal. But once they eat felt, then their urine becomes what? Najasun. It becomes najasun. Unless they go through the process of what our scholars call al-istibra al-haywan al-jalal. For an animal to go through that process of eating only clean food. Some animals, 1 day is fine, others 3 days, others 7 days, depending on the size of that animal. So we have also, as we mentioned, among the najasat, the 10, that is najasun, feces, okay, or excrement. But not all animals' excrement is najasun. Because remember, we mentioned feces is najasun. But does it cut across all other forms of animal? No. There are specific animals that feces are najasun and others are not najasun. And even there are some animals that they are haram to be eaten, but their urine or their feces are not najasun. Now let's just mention a few animals that their feces is not najasun. As we mentioned, animals that do not have the blood doesn't gush forth. And all the animals that we slaughter, when the blood gushes forth, their urine is impure, their feces is impure. Or animals that eat excrement, okay? Those animals are najasun until they go through those processes. Now let's look at the pure ones. Musannif says here that the feces of frogs, lizard, insect, or fish is pure. Okay? The feces of frog, okay, frog, we don't eat frog anyway, but the feces is not najasun. The same way lizard, insects, or fish is pure. Since these animals don't have flowing blood, their feces is not considered impure because they don't have flowing blood, as we mentioned. Blood that gushes. Animals that have blood that gushes is the one that their feces becomes impure. Now let's look at birds. Okay. So Musannif says that the urine and feces of birds are pure. The urine and the feces of birds, okay, they are regarded to be pure, even if the bird is haram to eat. But still, the feces of it remains pure. Example, like pigeons, sparrows, crows, all these, they are pure, even though they may not be halal to be eaten, like as we mentioned that of frogs and so on. He said if a bird consumes felt, its excrement is considered to be impure. So when it comes to eating felt, like excretors, as I mentioned, Whether it is an animal that the blood gushes forward, or it's an animal that the blood doesn't gush forward, once it is contaminated by this excrement, then automatically that animal becomes impure. The blood of that animal, or the feces, the urine and the feces of that animal become impure. Like, for instance, impure. Musani says that if a bird, like a chicken or a pigeon, has been feeding on impure substances, so the blood is pure. What do you call it? The feces is pure. But if it is fed on any excrement, automatically that makes it to be impure. And there are some that has some precautionary rulings. Musonif says that even though bird feces is pure, it is recommended to avoid the urine of birds that are considered to have substantial meat or are raised for consumption. So if a bird is raised for consumption, it is precautionary to stay away from the feces, the urine of that bird. You don't see it to be part of the general birds that are pure. Now, as we mentioned, yes, you have a question. Yes.
So like how we can't, like if you go to like someone else's house or like on their farm, right?
Yes.
Anything which we eat without their permission is considered haram. So
yes.
Like, what if one of your animals goes there and like without the permission of the other owners, and eats their food? You still have to wait that time period, or be considered halal.
To eat their food.
Yeah, like like they go from one farm to another.
Yes.
You like cattle go from one.
Oh no, that one there is no problem. The most important thing is you, the owner of the cattle or the animal, you have to go and pay the price of the damage that the animal has caused to that farmer. But the food they ate is pure because it's not impure stuff. It's not like they ate excrement or something like that. So in that case, they don't have a problem. The problem is between the owners, you, the owner of the animals, and the owner of the farm.
So if you don't feed, then it will be considered haram. Right?
No. The food is not going to be haram, but you are going to bear the consequences. Or the animal feces or urine is not going to be najis. But you, the one who allowed your animal to go and eat from that person's farm, you are the one who is going to be held accountable. Now, okay. So, doubtful animals, halal or haram. Okay, sometimes there are animals we are doubting, we don't know whether they are halal or haram. You see, in fiqh, there is a golden rule. Okay, they said everything is pure apart from the najasat, the 10 that we have mentioned, unless it is established for you that this thing is haram. As long as it is not established to you, you can't say it is najasun. You can't say it is haramun until when it is established. So let's say there is an animal. You don't know. You are doubt. Okay? As to whether the animal of this urine is tahir or is not tahir. And you don't. Okay? As long as there is no means for you at that moment to know, then there is no problem until when it is proven otherwise. Okay. It's like, for instance, now we are talking about the impurity. 10 impurities. But whenever something becomes impure, when something becomes impure, there are formula as to which we use to purify those things. And even these things that we use to purify, sometimes they themselves also can become impure. Like, for instance, water is regarded as one of the agent of purifying the impurity. I'm sure in your previous lesson you spoke about mutaharat, purifications, or maybe in the after this lesson you're going to be talking about that. Yani, apart from these 10 impurity that we have, whenever a person finds themselves in that state of impurity, they will use what? They will use the purity to purify impurity. But this even purity also sometimes can be najis. Okay, like for instance, water can be najis. If water becomes najason, it falls within the najasat that we have mentioned. And therefore, what happens then? Then we need to find a way to purify the water that is najason. Like for instance, let's say you want to make wudu, and you found water. You see, fiqh is amazing. The water that you found, it happens that right in front of you, a split of blood got contaminated to that water, and the water is less than core water. Automatically, that water becomes najis. Okay. But because you were there and you saw the blood contaminating the water, it is najis for you. But if somebody comes later and he didn't find you, and he found the water, the color, the taste, the smell of the water didn't change. For that person, the water is tahir. So that person, in that case, can use that water. And whatever that he uses the water for, there is nothing wrong. The water is clean. But for you, the water is unclean. Why? Because you were witness to the contamination of the water. So the golden rule says that, it says, كُلُّ شَيْءٍ طَاهِرٍ حَتَّى تَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ كَاذِرٌ. Everything is pure until you get to know that it is impure. So the moment you get to know that it is impure, then in that case, it cannot be used until it is purified. Now, let's come to dead body. One of the impurity is dead body. Okay. When someone dies, or even an animal, okay, we'll talk about some animals, that few of those that they are not najis. But whenever someone dies, the body of that person becomes najis. You see, this clearly tells us that when we say najisun, najisun is not like something that is out of ordinary, something that is extraordinary. No. You know, like look, urine is najis. When does it become najis? As I mentioned earlier on, once it exits, it's najis. But as we sit down here, we have piles of urine within ourselves. The same way feces. Once it exits, it becomes najis. The same way, immediately, someone dies or an animal dies, automatically it becomes najis. It becomes impure. And therefore, if you touch the body of a dead animal or a dead person, then you are contaminated, or you become contaminated with najasa. So there is a form that you need to use to purify yourself. Of course, there are, explanation as to when do we say that it is najasun and when it's not najasun. You see, usually when a human being or an animal is about to die, the temperature goes very high. So when the temperature goes high, and then as soon as the life, exits from that particular individual, then the body will start cooling down. So if you come in contact with the person while the body is still warm, still hot, then the body is not najis. When does it become najis? When the body becomes cold. As soon as the body becomes cold, then when you touch, it becomes impure. Now you find yourself in the status of impurity, and there are methods that you have to, use to purify yourself. So here Musannif tells us that the term dead body refers to an animal whose death was caused by means of other than proper Islamic slaughtering. Okay? Of course, not only animal here we are talking. Even a human being, when a human being dies also, the body is not clean, it's najis. Okay? And then also any animal that is not slaughtered. Okay? Animal that is to be eaten and is not slaughtered Islamically, that animal, once it dies, and you touch it, you have touched najasun. But the one that is slaughtered Islamically, when it dies, you have not touched anything that is najasun. And this is very important. Okay? Like you slaughter a cow, and then the body becomes cold, and now you start, working on the cow to chop it into pieces. You have not come in contact with the najasun. But if the cow die by itself, and the body becomes cold, then that is the kind of najasa we are talking about. So Musonif says that dead bodies of human and animals with flowing blood are impure. So animals, as we mentioned, that when you slaughter them, when the jugular is removed, the blood gushes. Dead bodies of such animal, all of them, they are impure. And therefore, such animals, we distance ourselves from them. Now, and sometimes parts severed from living beings are treated as impure, like dead body. Okay, so the same way, maybe somebody involved in an accident and then the leg is chopped off, so that lifeless part that is removed is regarded as impure, especially if it contains a bone. If it contains a bone. Okay, according to the teachings of our Maraji, when it contains a bone, the impurity of it is very strong. It's very, very strong. And therefore, in that regard, we have to be careful when we touch such parts. Then we have some parts of dead animals, but those parts don't contain blood. Okay, like the nails, like the hair, and so on. Those ones, they are pure. They are not impure. So those ones, if you touch them, there is nothing wrong, with touching those parts. But the place where the problem is when there is blood. Okay, blood flows within it, then those ones we have, problems with them. And now it comes to animals without flowing blood. There are animals that when we slaughter them, or maybe they don't have flowing blood, okay? Like dead animals without flowing blood, like lizard, scorpion, and fish are considered pure. So those ones, even though they are dead body, but they are okay. There's nothing wrong with them. It said the bat is also included based on experimentation. And the same ruling applies to animals whose blood status is uncertain. So if an animal's blood is uncertain, we don't know whether it has severe blood that will gush, or we don't know. We know or we don't know, so we don't have certainty. So those ones, their dead bodies are clean. There is nothing wrong with that. Now, we have some other animals that the leather, the meat, and the fat of it, is regarded as clean. Why? Because it is slaughtered Islamically. Okay, like for instance, if you're looking for a belt, the belt that you need should be, if it is leather, it must come from an animal that is slaughtered Islamically. If it is from the leather of a dead animal, then that is impure. Or it is from the leather of an animal that was shot, that was not slaughtered Islamically, then that also makes it impure. So Musani says that the meat, fat, and leather obtained from a Muslim or from a place where Muslims are predominant are considered pure. You have a question? Okay. This is very important. You see, animal that is slaughtered by Muslim, or a leather of an animal that is slaughtered by, even meats, okay, fat. If the leather, the meat or the fat comes from where is predominantly Muslim, it is pure. Okay, so you don't go to a Muslim house and you want to eat meat, then you ask him, is this meat halal? No, you cannot do that. Not only that, where is predominantly Muslim, Because there are Muslims there, you don't need to ask. If you buy a leather there, it's tahir. If you buy a meat there or fat or anything to do with an animal there, provided the animal is not haram, it is tahir. And also let's observe this. When I talk of slaughtering, we can't say we want to slaughter animal that is haram to make it tahir. Maybe somebody decide that maybe pig is a haram because it's not slaughtered Islamically. And therefore, you lay the pig down, you say, Bismillah, Allahu Akbar to slaughter it. No, it's not going to work because the nature of pig itself is haramun and najisun. Yes, Kabir.
There's a question over here.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum. If dead parts of animals are haram, then does that mean only performing Islamic slaughtering? Does its meat become halal?
If dead parts of an animal
are haram, then does that mean only performing Islamic slaughtering? Does its meat become halal?
I don't know if the question is clear. Okay.
I think they're trying to say that if we slaughter it Islamically, does that mean all of it's like body parts?
Of course, if a cow is slaughtered, all part of it is a halal. But if it dies, then it's a haram. Or maybe it involved in an accident and then part of the body was chopped off. That dead part, whether it is a cow, whether it is a human being, that part is, najisun. When we touch it, then we have to go to the process of cleaning ourselves. Maybe let's hope if that is what he meant. Okay? Any animal that is halal to be eaten, it is only halal because it is slaughtered Islamically. And once it is slaughtered Islamically, everything about it is halal. Unless the blood is. The blood must go out. Once the blood goes out, the meat, okay, is halal. And some other part of the animals that, our Maraji, they say is makruh and so on and so forth. And also even the blood that remains in the animal, let's say we slaughter a cow, and then there is a blood that remains in the cow after we were busy chopping it, that blood is tahir. There's nothing wrong with that. The only time that blood will be najisun is if that blood comes in contact with something that is najisun, then that blood will be najisun. I hope probably I understood the question and I answered it well. If maybe that is not the question, please rephrase yourself so that we can be able to get to the bottom of it, inshallah. Now, so we were talking about when a meat or leather or fat is found predominantly Muslim area, we don't need to question. It is halal. It can be used. Now let's come to items from non-Muslims. Okay, Musali says that the items taken from non-Muslims that may have come from a properly slaughtered animal are considered pure. Okay, we took it from Muslim, non-Muslim, but we know that he got it from Muslims. So in that case, we don't have any case to doubt it. It said they can be worn for prayer, but are not lawful to eat unless confirmed to have been taken from the properly slaughtered animal. So we have to be careful. Yes, it's non-Muslim, we can take it, but on condition that we have inquired and we understood that it is a Muslim that slaughtered. There is this question they say, what about if a kafir learns how to say Bismillahi Allahu Akbar and he slaughters? Is that meat halal? No, it's not. The condition of the meat to be halal is that the slaughter must be a Muslim. So you cannot make it halal just because you are able to say properly Bismillah Allahu Akbar. No, it still remains najisun. Now, so earlier on we mentioned that blood from animals with Gushian blood, mammals, is pure. Blood from animals without Gushian blood e.g. fish is pure. So animals that when we slaughter, the blood will gush, the blood is pure. So when we slaughter a cow and then we're busy cutting and then the blood touches, our hand, okay? It doesn't mean that we need to go through some process to clean. Yes, the blood itself, when it comes contaminated with our clothes, okay? We cannot perform salat with those clothes, okay? But the blood is not that of like a dead animal. No, it's not like that, okay? So that's what Muslim is saying, that the blood from animals with the gushing blood, e.g. mammals, is pure. Blood from animals without gushing blood, e.g. fish, is pure. So the blood of fish is pure, and then the blood of gushing animals, okay? But here, we have to be very careful. When we slaughter a sheep, even though the blood gushes, okay? According to most of our Maraji, if that blood splashes on your clothes, you cannot perform salat with that cloth. You have to remove it, unless if it is very small that it cannot be visible. In that case, there is no problem. But if it is visible, then that blood, according to some Maraji, it is not pure, and then it has to be removed. Now, so then we come to if one finds blood and is unsure if it is from an animal with gushing blood or not, it is considered pure. So like that's golden rule. Yani, whenever you are in doubt, yani, you must make sure before you can be able to take a decision. You can't take decision when you are not sure. Always you must be in a position of surety. Okay? You can't say this blood is najisun or this water is impure while you don't have any ruling to say it is impure. You cannot do that. So the same way Musannif is telling us here, he said if one finds blood and is unsure if it is from an animal with gushing blood or not, it is considered pure. Finding a small blood stain on clothes, but not to know when its source. Okay, you find a small blood on the cloth and you don't know the source, it means that the cloth is tired. There's nothing wrong because you don't know which blood it is, unless when you are proved that no, this is a blood from so and so. So in that regard, the blood becomes najasun. So I think yeah, we will end here, and then I'm sure you will have the what we call it the notes, so you will go through it, and then if there are any questions, because there are so many things that we're supposed to mention, but because of time, I don't know how many times we have. We still have 10 minutes. Okay, so quickly let's go to other najasat like alcohol. Okay, we mentioned alcohol is part of najasun. So any form of alcohol, it is najasun. But remember, there are certain things that is halal. But as soon as it turns into alcohol, it becomes najasun. Like grape, they have grape, they use grape to make, alcoholic beverages. Grape, juice is not haram. The only time it becomes haram is once it changes from its purity to become an intoxicant content. So we not only grape, beer and all these other things that they are made from any form, whether it is from sorghum, whether it is from millet, whether it is from maize or whatever, once there is intoxicant content that when somebody takes them in, they are going to be intoxicated, then in that case, it becomes what? Najasun and haram to consume. Now, so I think that is the last one that we didn't mention. So let me just recap what we have studied today. We said that everything is clean. Everything Allah has created is clean, except this 10, following 10. So everything you see everywhere is clean. The only ones that are not clean is urine, number 1. Number 2, feces. Number 3, semen. Number 4, dead body. Number 5, blood. Number 6, dog. Number 7, pig. Number 8, kafir. Number 9, alcoholic beverages. And then number 10, the sweat of kafir. These are the only 10 things out of the billions and billions of things that Allah has created, which is najisun. So these things, when they come in contact with something that is clean, they can make them najis. Okay? Now, yes, Kabir.
Mulana, so like how alcohol is haram, right?
Yeah.
What about the alcohol which you use to like clean wounds and stuff? Would that be considered haram?
That is very important. When we say alcohol is a haram, alcohol has two things. You see, these things that we mentioned, some of them they have two things that is a haram and najis. Okay, like pig, it's a haram and it is najis. Okay, so what makes it a haram is that you cannot consume it, and it is najis. Also, you don't touch it. If you touch it, you become mutanajis. Okay, so the same way when it comes to alcohol, drinking it is completely haram, and touching it also is najis. Unless in extreme cases, when alcohol is turned into medicine and there's no any other alternative. The only alternative that we have is that alcohol. Probably, you see, like when during the time of COVID, the sanitizers, most of it, they are made out of alcohol. So in that case, we don't have a choice. We touch them. And when we are going to perform salat, we clean them. Okay? So alcohol is a najisun and it is haramun. Other things, they are just najisun. But their hurma is not like the others. Alcohol, you cannot consume it at any, but if you have wounds and then you have to use alcohol to treat it, there's nothing wrong with that, provided there's no any other option, or it is the best option to use to be able to cure your wounds. There is nothing wrong with that. Now, is there any other question? Yes, we have one question. Yes. Yes, so please, whoever online that you have any question, you are welcome. You can type it so that we can attend to it, inshallah. Oh, okay. Even if you speak, we can hear you. So inshallah, hopefully next week, Brother Samir will continue with the purities, the mutaharat. Yes, today we spoke about najasat, and then look at how our scholars, they arranged it. We talk about the impurities, then after that we talk about purities. So what do we learn from here? Once we know the impurities, how do we purify something that becomes impure? These 10 impurities, how do we purify them? So we have about 12 things that we can use to purify impurity. And even those purified, the ones that we use to purify, they can also be contaminated to become impure as well. If they are contaminated, according to the explanation of our jurists, they will also fall under impurities, like water. Water is part of the purity, but water also can be contaminated with the impurity for it also to be impure. Now, there's no question. Okay, inshallah, I hope that the lesson was well understood. And even after this time, whenever there is a question that comes in your mind with regards to the things that we have studied, you are welcome to ask, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.